so I don't forget. Okay, hi everyone, and welcome to our last SLDS monthly webinar of this year. My name is Jamie Spicer. I'm at Wake Forest School of Medicine, and this is the last webinar that I'm organizing, which is sponsored by the section on statistical learning and data science of the American Statistical Association. Today, we are honored to have our very own SLDS chair, Sarah Kalicin, talking about successful career relationships. Sarah is a data scientist and industrial statistician with Intel Corporation and is passionate about how organizations gain more business value through data science. She's worked in various industry and government positions across her career, including Kraft Foods, Nabisco, Ford Motor Company, and USDA National Agriculture Statistics Service, where she has gained insight and experience on how successful organizations function and allow them to succeed in their analytic initiatives. Her talk will last about an hour, and if you have any questions, feel free to chat them in and I can interject and ask them as she's speaking. And we also will have about 30 minutes for discussion at the end of her talk. So we should have plenty of time to answer all of your questions and hopefully open it up for some discussion. The webinar is being recorded and will be available on our section website. I'd like to thank our speaker and the sponsor of this webinar, the Statistical Learning and Data Science section of the American Statistical Association. And Sarah, I'll turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Jamie. And on behalf of the Statistical Learning and Data Science, I do want to say thank you to Jamie for a wonderful year and a half of putting these webinars together. I know she puts a lot of effort in. She's had essentially webinars each month, and I know there's a lot of work. So Jamie, thank you very much. We are looking for a replacement for Jamie. So if you're interested in helping out with this section, the Statistical Learning and Data Science, please reach out to me and I will, see what we can do to either, if you're going to be a great fit to be a webinar chair or another position within the section. We're always looking for volunteers. So please reach out if you're interested in volunteering for the section. All right, with that, today I'm bringing in developing successful career relationships. How do you leverage mentoring, coaching, and sponsorship? And this came from a response from our annual the Statistical Learning and Data Science section annual meeting back in August, where a lot of the discussions were around, career growth, interviewing, and how do we really promote statisticians and data science within the ASA so that we as a profession are much stronger. And this presentation here is something that I actually put together about 10 years ago after I reflected on some time in my career where I was stuck. As you go through your career, you're going to have ups and downs. You're going to be in positions that are really, you feel great in, you feel like you're contributing, you maybe have a great manager or a great organization. And then there's other times where things change around and then all of a sudden you go, what in the world happened? How did I get here? And you might find yourself in a career stagnation. And I found myself getting into a position that I just it was not a right fit for me. And the longer I was in there trying to figure out, I'm a fighter. So basically I was trying to figure out how I could change, the organization so that it'd be much more efficient. That's me being the industrial statistician. But the organization just essentially was, into maintaining and really wasn't utilizing my skills. So basically I found myself in the spiral time period where my morale just came down. My self-confidence came down and I could feel it. And I was trying to get out of the position. I was looking and getting interviews and so forth, but because my self-confidence had dropped, my morale dropped, that really came through in the interviews, and I wasn't able to move out. So I just basically sat there and just said, what in the world, is going on? Go through, 3 years later, I finally got out of that position, and I just sat back and said, wow, I just don't want to be in that position anymore. I don't want to have a low self-esteem. I don't want to have, low morale. And I really want to make sure that the organizations I'm working on or working in are really leveraging my background. And I sat back and started thinking, okay, so how did I get from that low point to where I got to where I was at that point? And this presentation is really a reflection of what I did in order for me to get out of that time. And even if you might not necessarily be in a career stagnation, or you might still have fortunately have really high confidence and high morale, that is awesome. You can still use these techniques to help you even promote yourself and go forward. In fact, a lot of the suggestions I have here are really around, really based around a lot of the science and studies around what it really does take to help really be able to build a career and for yourself. All right, so what is today's presentation? We're going to be talking about creating your relationship circles. And I'm going to start off kind of why these career relationships for development are really important, and how to kind of frame that so that you can not only just look at it for your job, but look at other aspects of your life. We're going to talk about the different relationships: mentoring, coaching, sponsorship. We're going to go and define kind of what they are and how you can basically utilize this. And then we're going to talk about how to find these relationships. Okay, so one of the things I do want to say is, this isn't going to just be me doing all the talking. I'm going to actually have a little bit of assignments throughout. So it's really going to be crucial that you have a piece of paper and a pen, because I'm not going to be doing all the work. Hopefully you're going to have a little bit of a plan. I'll be helping you put together a framework. So you're going to need a piece of paper and be thinking about some of this stuff. All right, let's get into kind of why relationships for development. Well, one of the things we need to think about, we're all kind of individuals. We all have our own strengths. We all define our successes differently. So we really want to have relationships that can basically, be tailored to ourselves. And as individuals, we're the only ones that really know kind of what really makes us tick, what kind of environments we want to be in. And we also know kind of what's holding ourselves back. So, we need to be taking ownership in our own career development. We also all face different barriers, roadblocks, and, maybe we get into territories, like maybe you're going from a technical contributor to a manager, and now you have to manage an entire team. There's a lot of roadblocks that might be, like, what do I need to be doing? How do I do this? How do I get performance from my folks so that you can be successful? Not only you be successful, but your team being successful. From a technical point of view, you might be put onto a new team and so forth. And, you might need to, you find out that as a statistician or a data scientist, that there are certain types of techniques that you might be aware of that you might want to be able to use in that program or that this project. And you need to go figure out kind of how to do that. And maybe that's not something that, you could go and do all the research and so forth on it, but is that really the most effective? If you know that there are other people out there who have experience on that, why don't you go, it's really beneficial to go out and find people who can help you get up to speed, figure out kind of what the roadblocks are, what you need to know for within those territories or that knowledge. You'll be much more effective and push you through much faster. And that goes back to kind of a little bit of what I was just saying. You really want to be able to leverage other skills, experiences, and perspectives. Sure, you can go and kind of learn everything, but if you can learn from other people, it really allows you to get those different perspectives that you might not necessarily have. You can leverage other people's experiences and be able to bring things together and put it and create your own way of how you want to approach. You might find out that there's blind spots that you have that on skills and so forth that you need to have somebody else say, hey, you might want to consider, these type of skills, in order for you to be much more effective. So you really want to make sure that you have a circle of relationships that can help support you in your development in your career so that you can be much more successful. So we all think about mentoring, but there's a lot of myths around mentoring. One of the myths that people have is there's one perfect mentor. I just need one mentor and they'll help me throughout my entire career. And that's actually not true. Sure, you could have one mentor that you can go and rely on, but you're going to find out that they're really, maybe good in one area. But you might have another area that you might want to be able to, develop. For example, you might find out that, have one mentor that is really good in maybe, certain statistical analysis or, how to, lead teams, but maybe that person's not really great in helping you really be able to communicate something. So finding another mentor in that could, help augment kind of the other mentorship. Mentoring is a long-term relationship. It doesn't need to be. In fact, I think some of my mentors probably didn't even realize that they were mentoring me. Just a quick one-on-one, half-hour one-on-one could be a mentoring relationship. You don't necessarily need to have, be signing up with people. I mean, unless this is, what you want to learn, and it does entail a longer relationship. Having a series of different mentors in different areas that you can leverage at any time could be anywhere from, a hallway conversation all the way up to kind of a longer term relationship, maybe on a regular basis. It really depends on the scope and the need that you have. Mentoring is for junior people. So a lot of people think, hey, you need a mentor just when you're kind of entering into the career. That's actually not true. In fact, all the way up into the executive ranks and CEOs and so forth, they're always looking for these type of relationships, having mentors or, coaches or sponsors. And I'll define kind of these things in a few minutes. They're really important at any level, at any time in your career, because there's always going to be something that you need to be learning all through your career. Your career should really be about how you're going to be learning and what you need to learn so that you can be more and more effective as you grow in your career. Mentoring is something that more experienced people do out of the goodness of their heart. Actually, these type of relationships aren't just one way, where the mentee, the person who's getting the mentoring, gets everything, and then the person who's the mentor isn't. It's actually a two-way street. They both should be learning from each other and being able to enjoy the relationship and the fact that both sides are getting something from that relationship. And then the last part here, as you've already kind of heard me allude to, mentoring is not the only career relationship. I will be talking about, the difference between mentoring, coaching, and sponsorship. And each one of these have a different perspective that, hopefully will help you as you're developing these relationships, being able to identify and label these so that you can have a better conversation and set the expectations with the person that you are working with. Okay. Any questions on this? Any questions, Jamie, from the audience?
Nope, I don't see anything. And if things do come in, then I'll interject.
Okay.
So yeah, you can keep going. Thanks.
Awesome. Okay, so let's look at your career. Okay. Some people don't like the idea of career ladder, but I'm going to use the career ladder as an analogy here because I think this kind of helps with the exercises for you to start thinking about your career in three aspects. The one aspect that I want to think about are kind of the rungs, which are essentially your jobs. Okay. Then your career are kind of rails that hold the jobs together. Okay. And then you have work-life balance are really kind of the welding between the job and your career. And you really need to be thinking about how can I do better within your current job, your work-life balance, and also to be able to support your career. Whoops, going the wrong way. So you always need to be thinking about what skills, knowledge, and guidance you need to be able to move up your career. Okay, so for example, you go from graduate school or college into your first job. Okay, what got you into your first job is basically what you did in college or university. All right, but what got you into your first job is not going to get into your second job or your third job. And that's where the career rails have. You need to be thinking about, okay, how do I gain skills and behaviors that enable me in my job that make me, make me to do better within that job, be much more efficient in my job in that. And then you also need to think about what other opportunities that you can and other experiences that can actually help you advance so that you can move up into the next rung through that. And then the work-life balance is really just obtaining awareness and skills so that you don't necessarily, if you're going to spend all your time in your job, you might burn out. And then that means that your career, the rungs, are not going to be able to support your current job, and you might just burn out and not be able to move up. It's kind of what sometimes that's one of the byproducts of having a lack of work-life balance. So we need to think about, okay, how do we essentially move up the rungs in support of our career, thinking kind of more forward. And also how do, there might be aspects of work-life balance that also might be honing us back. So with that, we always need to be thinking about what aspects do we need to be learning so that we can have a better work-life balance? What can we do that could be holding us back in our jobs? What could be holding us back in our careers, or what could help us propel us through? What knowledge, what skills, what experiences do you need in order to ensure that these aspects? So, so this is kind of part of the worksheet that we have here. So I wanted people to spend maybe 2 or 3 minutes thinking about, what part of your work-life balance could be holding you back? Maybe something like, I have an example here, how to incorporate fitness into my business schedule. Maybe there's another aspect. How do I spend more time with my kids? How do I, have better relationship with my partner? Those could be some of the work-life balance questions. And then job, it could be something, what will help you be much more efficient or more effective, or help you get more of a promotion, or a promotion or a higher salary. So think about some of the things that you need to learn, or some of the barriers that are holding you back in your current job. So here I have some examples of how do I build better team alignment, dealing with more of the softer skills, which you might not necessarily be getting from a technical background. Maybe you need to be learning a little bit more about the subject matter expertise that you're working with the subject matter experts within teams that at work. So I work at Intel, so some of the questions I could be asking is, what do I need to learn about microprocessors and their functions that are important so that I could have better, effective conversations with my subject matter experts, so that I'm seen as a team partner, and I can help my teammates be more successful with data. Maybe it's, I'm looking to create bigger impact in my job. So maybe, understanding how I can sell higher impact projects that I see as gaps within my organization. How do I do that? So these are some of the questions that, from a job perspective, you might be asking, but there could be others too. There's no wrong. If there's insecurities around your job and so forth, put those down. Those are really great questions to ask. And then from a career perspective, you might be wanting to ask like, hey, so what is my next position? Or, what are my opportunities out there? Maybe, from a more long-term perspective, I really need to hone my business acumen. So how can I, maybe improve my business acumen? That will help, with more of the high impact projects that in my current job. But if I can understand kind of the business, I can, be seen and be able to articulate my projects much more effectively. So I would like to give everyone about like 2 minutes and think about what's holding you back, or what are your barriers, or what are, things that you might not necessarily understand, that you want to have better understanding, either from a work-life balance, job, or career standpoint. And if anybody wants to share, like one of your, what you put down, feel free to put it in the chat, and then, we can talk about it. I'll give everyone about another 30 seconds. Does anybody want to share? Okay.
Sarah, I can break the ice and maybe
Okay.
share something.
Awesome.
So I'm in academia, and I feel like there's lots of different tasks that you can agree to. So I think what I've been struggling with sometimes is, instead of trying to say yes to everything, I'm really trying to focus on saying yes to things that are going to get me to the next level, or that are like in line with what I need to do to get promotion and tenure. But I think it's really hard to navigate because, you develop personal relationships with people and then they ask you to do something and you feel like you ought to say yes, even though it doesn't really align with exactly what you should be doing.
Yeah, and that's a common one for a lot of us. When do you say no, and how do you prioritize that going forward? So, right, cool. Anybody else want to? Thank you for sharing, Jamie. Anybody else want to share?
And if anyone wants to, I can allow you to unmute yourself if you click the raise hand thing, if you don't want to chat it in.
I'll give people 5 more seconds to unmute. All right. So, starting out with what you want to learn is like the first thing, because if you're not really clear about what you want to learn, identifying the relationships and so forth can be hard. And you don't necessarily have to have them crisp, because that could be also, part of the conversation you have. So let's start talking about types of relationships on here. So types of relationships, as you've heard me say before, there are 3 types of relationships. There's mentoring, and this is really about skill development and gaining knowledge and new thinking. Okay, so this is kind of just like, getting awareness, or just learning, being able to remove maybe blind spots, and understanding kind of, building out your skills as either from your job or from a career perspective. This next type of relationship is a little bit more evolved, and that is coaching. And this is really about person development. This is really about, really honing your development so that you can be able to perform at a higher level, so that it gives you more opportunities in the future. And a lot of people know kind of about mentoring and coaching, and you probably experienced that either through college. Your advisor could have been, or some of your instructors could have been, mentors and coaching you throughout your career. Maybe your manager, if you're in a industry role or working for a company, and so forth. The other part that people don't actually recognize or really, see as important is sponsorship. And sponsorship is really, this is where the career development opportunities come from, because sponsorship is really having someone basically being able to be an advocate for you, be able to stand up for you when you're not there. You can only, you could be your best advocate, but, and if you wanted something, like maybe you want an opportunity or something, or somebody else sees that there's an opportunity you would be really great for, you really need to make sure that you have sponsorship so that doors are open for you. And I will be going through kind of giving you examples and so forth going forward. And when I look back at that time, what I ended up seeing was that I actually ended up leveraging every single one of these. And this is really what helped me get out of that stagnation and be able to lift up my confidence and self-esteem from this. And that was from basically being able to say, okay, here's what's holding me back. Here's what I need to figure out. And then finding folks who could help me in each one of these areas. And I'll talk about how I leverage some of these things. So let's go in a little bit more detail about mentorship. Mentorship is really about increasing knowledge base and proposing new ways of thinking. So, these aren't necessarily deep relationships, or they can become a little bit more deep, but you're really looking for people who can really expand your knowledge. So it could be in technical comprehension, business understanding, organizational awareness, or just basically self-aware. Okay. Anyone can be a mentor. It doesn't have to be a more senior person. In fact, there's a thing called reverse mentoring, where a senior person looks to somebody who is, maybe entry level or in college or intern, and learning kind of what's happening. You probably see a lot of reverse mentoring from a lot of the senior managers, or in industry, because data science or AI, all this stuff is really new, and the folks that are coming out of college are much more aware and see kind of what the technical capabilities are. So you do see, this is an example that you might be aware of within your own industry. I use mentoring a lot, and a lot of the things that I was struggling through was just basically, what other opportunities are there within my company? And I use mentoring just basically as to figure out kind of what other organizations are going on, what was happening within the organization. So I would set up one-on-ones with people, and they would give me, explain to me kind of what was happening in the organization. And it really helped me get a broader perspective of what was going on, so that it gave me ideas of where other opportunities were happening. Also, Intel is a really engineering heavy organization. So, being able to go and find, a electrical engineer or a hardware engineer and say, okay, how does this work? Was really empowering to me, because then it helped me have better conversations with my key stakeholders, so that I could, I understand this. I understand why this is important, and how to take, how to apply my data analysis to the projects that I was working on. So this is kind of some examples of how we can leverage mentorship. All right, coaching is a little bit better, is a little bit different from mentoring. Coaching is really about finding someone who can basically guide you to achieve more personal or professional results. This is really about figuring out how you operate, and so that you can perform at your highest potential without necessarily being a cookie cutter perspective. So coaching could be good for, being able to close performance gaps. So maybe, as a technical person, maybe part of, what's holding you back is your interpersonal communication or your interpersonal skills and so forth. And how do you develop that over time? And having somebody who can basically, give you feedback or allow you to do dry runs of presentations and so forth could be some examples of how coaching could be used. If you're going from a individual contributor into management, there's a whole different perspective. Getting a coach that can really help you hone your management and leadership skills can help. Maybe even collaboration and team building is another aspect. You really want to be finding individuals who essentially can excel in the areas that you want some development in, and that can translate that learning into steps that empower you to be better on that. And coaching is actually done. Is really embraced, especially the higher you get into an organization. You might get coaching from your immediate manager or supervisor, but as you're going through your career, you'll actually find out that, and in fact, I work in HR right now, and I see a lot of the coaching activities are actually really focused on the upper echelon of the organization, of our executives and our managers and our directors. There's a lot in larger corporations, there's a lot of resources put into coaching in order to help managers or senior leaders be much more effective in being able to gain more from the teams that they have. So this is really, really, really common. I use coaching. I actually reached out and hired an executive coach to help me figure out what was going on with me. As I said, I had really low self-esteem, low morale, and I needed to really figure what was going on. Why was I not performing at a standard that I felt like I should be performing? And she had me go through a whole bunch of assessments and so forth. And through those assessments, she basically figured out, she goes, look, here's the situation. You're in an organization that likes maintaining. All right. You are a person who likes to get things done and taking things to another level. There's a disconnect between that. And when she said that, it was like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. So for me, the coaching was just basically being able to understand who I was and what I need to be looking for in my next position. Okay, so she really empowered me to understand who I was, what I was good at, and figure out, how to take that information and look for a new position. It was really powerful for me. The next part here is sponsorship. Now, sponsorship is really about finding people who can open up doors for you, so that you can get more experience, given more, and it's really about getting more exposure so that people get to know who you are. It's being able to be given stretch roles that maybe, taking on more responsibilities in a safe environment so that you can say, hey, you can build out your portfolio of what you've been able to achieve and being able to show the impact you've made, obtaining more experiences, growing your network, and then also being able to be identified for opportunities within your organizations. Sponsorship, this is where you, more specifically, sponsorship is going to be somebody who is much more senior than you are. And these are people who are essentially going to be in meetings or making decisions or having conversations where you want them to be bringing up your name for opportunities and so forth. Let me give you an example of the key aspect of sponsorship and how I ended up using this. I was doing a lot of networking, and I found an opportunity that within another organization that allowed me to do a temporary assignment, and it using my statistical analysis. And then they really needed they really needed this, this capability, but they didn't have the headcount to actually hire me in that position. So at Intel, we have a thing called data assignments or gigs, which basically allowed me to move over while I was still, the headcount was in another organization. So, but I needed to be able to go to my manager, who I didn't necessarily trust, to do this. And I needed to figure out getting, how do I make this work? So I went to somebody who was pretty senior in the organization and said, hey, I have this opportunity. How do I make this happen? And he said, let me handle this. And he did. He basically negotiated this entire thing, and it allowed me to get out of my organization and get into another organization temporarily. I would have never been able to do that on my own. This really needed it to be somebody from a senior point of view to be able to negotiate that for me. And I was really grateful. Actually, leading up to that also ended up being a couple sponsorships as well. The way that I actually got to find out about this position was I was having a conversation with somebody and I said, hey, this is what I really like to be doing. After learning kind of from my coach what I need to be focusing on, he goes, hey, I got somebody for you. He introduced me to one of our most senior technical fellows. I set up a time with him, and he introduced me to another person who had this opportunity. So this is another example of how, you know, sponsorship could be just having an introduction to somebody who you would never be able to have a conversation with because somebody else said, hey, let me do an introduction. That's a simple sponsorship. Now, you have to be careful with sponsorships, because you have to realize that the person who's doing the sponsorship has, you know, has skin in the game here. They're going to only sponsor you as much as they trust you. So a lot of this is also, you can't just go to like someone senior and just expect them to be able to make things work. You have to establish your brand. You have to establish, show that you are an investment in their sponsorship. So keep that in mind. There's nothing wrong about saying, hey, you know, this is what I'm trying to do, and see if they're willing to help you. But do realize that, you know, sponsorship, there's an aspect of, you know, that you have to be really careful about. Okay. With that, you know, we need to think about, you know, the different types of relationships. And let me give you an analogy here of how to look at mentoring, coaching, and sponsorship on here. So we've all heard, like, if you give a man a fish, they can eat for a day, or he can eat for the day. If you teach them to fish, then, you know, they can fish for a lifetime. Okay. You got to see mentoring as basically telling a person, you know, about fishing. You need to get, you know, a fishing pole, you need to get bait, you need to get, you know, go down to the river and, you know, throw your pole in and so forth. It's basically, a mentor is basically telling you what you need to do in order to be able to fish. Coaching is really about taking the person down with all the equipment and so forth, and really showing them how to fish. Maybe, if you're going for a certain type of fish, you're going to use this type of bait. You're going to need to cast the lure out and so forth. That is coaching. Sponsorship is, hey, the best fish in the middle of the pond. Here's a boat. Go out and go to these and go get these. Go get the fish. You're given an opportunity to be able to get more fish, maybe that you can sell, that you can then buy your own boat. That's sponsorship. All right. with that, let's start talking. Let's go back to our creating our circle here. And what I want you to think about is, on everything that you put down here, what type of relationship do you think you need to help you with what you need to learn in your career? So I'll give you like 1 minute to go down and say, is this more of a mentoring relationship? Is this more of a coaching relationship? Or is this something that I need to get somebody to find a sponsor? So I'll give you 1 minute for this. All right, I'll give you 10 more seconds to finish. All right, now that you've identified what you want to learn and what type of relationship you're looking for that position, let's start talking about, finding the best relationships. When you're looking for relationships, you really want to make sure that you have the circle of trust, respect, confidentiality, and open communication. These are the foundations of what you're looking for. So if you don't trust the person, or you don't feel like you can have an open communication, or there's not a dual respect, or you also don't feel like the confidentiality is there, it's probably not going to be a great relationship. Not saying that you can't learn this necessarily from them, you just realize that you're not going to be able to be really open with that person. All right. The other thing too is you also want to look at kind of, do these people have the skills that you need from them, or experiences, or backgrounds, or personalities? These are the things that you're going to be, thinking about as you're evaluating, would this person be a really great fit for me? And then the next part is start doing informational interviewing. Informational interviewing is really about finding people where you can basically interview them and find out if they're a really good fit. Do you trust them? Do they seem to have open communication? Do they seem to have knowledge or skills or experiences that you feel like you can benefit from based on the things that you want to learn? Okay, so, informational interviewing is really about expanding your network and understanding who's out there that you can help, you can leverage their background. And you're going to essentially find out that you're building different circles. Like and what you want to be doing is, hey, here are the things that I'm struggling. Can you give me some feedback on this? You want to find out about their experiences, their skill sets, their experiences. What are their strengths? Do you resonate with that? Is there compatibility and established rapport on that? I'll give you an example. There's one guy who I got along really, really well with, and he really loved giving advice out and being able to help people. And he loved, chatting with me. One of the things that I found out was, and all his advice, great advice, but it just didn't seem to resonate with me. Like, I didn't know how to take that information and do something with it. So it wasn't a really great fit for me. I would take tidbits from him, but I found other folks that I could digest their suggestions much better than this other person. You can gain on how, especially when it comes around coaching, how they handle certain situations. You might see that somebody does some really great being able to bring teams together or diffuse conflict and so forth. So start, maybe setting up a time with that person and just say, hey, how do you approach that? How, how could I learn to do something like that? That might be, you might turn into a really great coaching relationship. You might find out like resources or individuals that they can point you to so that you can achieve goals or build your skills and experiences. And then also, you might also discover potential career paths because of this as well. So depending kind of the context of what you're holding back, informational interviewing is really great to kind of really understand who's out there, what their experiences are, and how you can gain from that. Some BKMs or best known practices around informational interviewing: you own and control the interview. So come really well prepared, have your questions that you want to ask, be very upfront about what you want to learn from that person so that they're, mentally prepared for the conversation. Make sure that you're asking engaging, open questions and not necessarily yes or no questions. Some folks are a little bit more introverted, so making sure that you're asking open-ended questions will help, be able to get more information from them. And make sure that you thank the person for their time. Okay, so with that, and I know we're kind of running out of time right now. The next part of this is really, who can you go out and start doing some informational interviewing? And the first, person that you can, you can list out maybe a couple people and just set up a time with them and say, hey, I see that you're doing a really great job in this area. I'm interested in learning about that. Do you mind talking about that? And they could be within the company, or they could also be outside the company. So, keep your mind open to and keeping your eyes open to folks, that you run into. Or you can even ask other folks too, like, hey, do you know somebody who can help me with this item that I'm trying to find a mentor or coach or a sponsor for? All right, so to wrap this up, the activities that we did today around developing career relationships are really about, one, identifying what's holding you back or what do you want to improve. Asking questions like, where do you want to go in your career? What are your options? Start asking those questions and start filling those out, either in your, work-life balance, job, or career. The next part of it was really identifying, what type of help do you need? Do you need a mentor kind of just giving you general knowledge, or do you need a coach that can actually help really develop you as a person so that you get perform at a higher performance? Or is there a coach who can basically help, as a stepping stone and push you in your career, giving you more opportunities and experiences that you couldn't do on your own? And then identifying those people who can help you overcome these obstacles. So making sure that people are aware of the areas that you're looking for help, being open to connecting with new people so that you can widen your network, and then also be able to prepare to be able to see how they can help you. So these are the 3 activities that we went over today. So hopefully this really has helped you kind of really look how you can leverage mentoring, coaching, and sponsorship so that you can have a really fulfilling career. And I'll open it up to Q&A. And also, feel free to connect with me. I'm looking to create a coaching opportunity, coaching business where I help data scientists and managers of data scientists and analytic experts to achieve more with data through coaching. So let me know if there's anything that you need help with on that as well. So any questions?
Sarah, thank you so much for a wonderful talk. I think you have a lot of experience and it really shows, in terms of how you talk about your career and decisions you've made and relationships that have helped you along the way. I'd encourage our attendees, if you have any questions, either click the raise hand feature and I can allow you to unmute, or chat them in. And in the meantime, I'd love to get your thoughts on people who have been unexpected mentors or coaches or sponsors for you. When you were talking about interviewing, I thought it was really interesting because one of my, I think, greatest mentors is a person who I probably wouldn't have picked if I actually interviewed him, because he functions in a really different way from me, but it's been so helpful to see a different perspective. I'm wondering if you can share, if you've had any unexpected great successes, or kind of how to navigate, if you find someone who you think will be really helpful, but maybe they are different from you in certain ways. How can you navigate that to try to, gain their expertise?
Yeah. And as an introvert, I struggle with that. So I can totally understand. And there's, depending on the person, you could also be totally intimidated by that. So, you have to recognize that too. I mean, you don't want to be really getting into a position where you're so totally intimidated that you can't even have a conversation or be listening to the person. But you also want to take that opportunity of look, I can learn a lot, being able to step out of your comfort zone. So, I mean, I know that I spent a lot of time oh, do I want to do this? Oh, this is a really great opportunity. Then I start talking myself out of it. And then I would talk myself into it. This is where, set up that meeting, or just send out an email and ask for it. I mean, nowadays it's a lot of, just email because we're not seeing everybody in person. But if you're walking down the hall and you see somebody and they seem to be, not in a rush to get somewhere, maybe just stop them and just say, and have one question in the back of your mind that you can basically say, hey, I saw that you did a really great job on this, or, hey, I really would like to learn more about this. And I actually did this with one of our top female technical leaders in the company. She's just fantastic to watch her give a presentation. She's just fantastic. And I was just blown away. And I actually basically sent an email and said, hey, I would love to understand what you do to prepare for a presentation. Do you mind if I set up a time with you to do that? Or, who do I need to work with? Because usually the senior leaders have admins. Who do I need to work with to be able to get a half an hour of your time? And sure enough, I did get a time. It was a couple months down the road. You do have, if you're reaching out to somebody who's really senior, it might be a few months before you can get onto their calendars because they're packed. But it was really a rewarding type of thing. And she actually knows who I am. So, which, it was a win-win type of thing on it. So I got to understand kind of what she did to prepare. And then I also, got some exposure, and she understands kind of what I do too. So it was a win-win. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, that's great. You've kind of alluded to this a little bit too, but I'm curious, in this age where we're not really seeing people in person as much, and, people are really fatigued with all these video calls. I'm wondering if you have any advice for maybe after you have already established a relationship, how can you best maintain it, during this challenging time?
Yeah, I'm really bad at, maintaining relationships for a long period of time. One of the things that I've been thinking about doing is really just, hear here's a list of people who I really want to keep in touch with, and, just start, and I was kind of doing this even before, because we have a lot of remote areas. So even before COVID, I would have folks up in Oregon or Arizona or, Europe and so forth. And, setting up a calendar where, you're setting up like coffee chats, maybe 1 or 2 a week with different people, and just rotating that over a couple of months or 6 months or something, so that you're not really taking up a lot of people's times, but just touching base with them and kind of just seeing kind of what they're doing, or how you can even help them. It's one thing I didn't necessarily say. Always try to figure out how you can also help them as well, and see what they're trying to work on and what you can help contribute to.
Yeah, I think I like that idea of just trying to reach out. It's just so hard right now. I mean, hopefully things will get better, and as we get more and more used to this, it'll just become normal.
Right. And the
Yeah.
other thing too is, people, meetings after meetings after meetings, but hey, just doing a coffee chat and say, hey, this is a coffee chat, which is not it's kind of more of a break type of thing. Where, just say, hey, if you can meet, love to have 30 minutes of your time or 15 minutes of your time, just to be able to have a general conversation that could just go anywhere. That can actually help a lot of us beat Zoom fatigue, because we're not necessarily in a meeting that, I have to prepare for it.
So I have one other question. I don't see any coming in from the attendees, but please feel free to write in or raise your hand. So the last thing I was thinking about during your presentation, you're talking a lot about like compatibility, or once you kind of learn the things that you hope to get out of the mentorship or coaching or sponsorship, do you have any advice for maybe how to like break up with the person, or like, I mean, I know it's often a long-term relationship, but like when the main thing that you wanted, to get out of the relationship has ended, how do you go about navigating that? Does it need to be something formal where you say, okay, thank you, that's all I need from you? Or, is it kind of just like fizzle?
So if it's a long-term relationship, you really do need to negotiate that up front and say, hey, here's the expectations of the of the relationship. How often are you going to meet? What would success look like? How long would the relationship be on that? So if you have a long-term reason, it should be something that both of you kind of understand and so forth. Now, if it's something where you feel like you're not getting what you need out of the relationship, you could either, one, bring that up and just say, hey, this is, and just be honest and being transparent and just say, look, thank you for your time. I really appreciate what our conversations, and I find them really informative. At this point, I think I'm good to go. And you can break off the relationship from that. So, I mean, those are some techniques that you could use.
Yeah, great. Well, seeing no other questions coming in, I think we can probably conclude here. And Sarah, once again, this was a great conversation. I really appreciate you taking the time to put this together. I think it's really helpful, for all of our viewers, certainly, and great career relationship advice.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for the opportunities. And again, I welcome any questions. Feel free to send me an email or a message through LinkedIn if you want to discuss this a little bit further. So thank you.
Okay, awesome. Well, happy holidays, everyone, and hopefully we'll see you next year.
Yep. Happy holidays, everyone.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.